So next one is the gameplay information, and that is something that is kind of dear to my heart, which is now we're putting information in the sounds, right? We have the mix, we know what the thread is, we have the accuracy to understand where it's coming from. Now we want to know who is it, what are they doing. We have a pretty complex game, 6 enemies, 5 friendlies, 12 in total. And we have this thing that is a core value for Overwatch, which is this real-time hero swapping. If in the moment someone dies as a Reinhardt, they might come back as a Junkrat because they feel that's better for them to attack me that way. So we want to understand really quickly who's coming at me, what is the sound identity of a hero. And I think the sound department and the guys with Scott and Paul and all the rest of the team in Irvine did a fantastic job giving a really core sound design identity to the heroes, which might be its own talk, essentially, of going deep and saying what's the design elements there. And that's here. But we also want to make clear that we understand, we give cues to the player to understand what they're doing. Every hero has a pretty limited set of abilities, maybe 1, 2 bigger abilities. Some have a mobility ability and then ultimate. These ultimate really needs to shine and come through and cut through the mix in terms of, again, sound design or the sound itself. And then we have something that is just a core of our engine design, which we called DataFlow. And what it does is essentially it's a way of publish game information in our game. So that might be my health, or Reinhardt's shield, or how high I am over ground if I'm flying, or the time left on the map, or progression on a point capture. We have so many information in the world, and I created a system where the sound designers are able to just subscribe to any gameplay information, like we call it DataFlow, and pipe it automatically into any sound they're using. And I wrote that once, that was like 4 years ago, and never touched it since, essentially. And that allows them to pick up things. So we had, I think it's even, I was thinking about that after the last presentation. The tracer gunfires, do they have a little bit of a angular velocity on them?
Angular velocity, yeah.
Yeah, because if you swipe a little bit, they go zzz, zzz, a little bit like the Star Wars sword, but super subtle. But it took 30 seconds to hook that up and drive angular velocity into a tracer weapon sound and have a little bit of a pitch shift there. So that is really key. And then we use music also as a driver of gameplay information. We know immediately, oh, it's overtime. We only have like 10 seconds left. We need to, work on our gameplay objective. And we have a few examples. We have one with footsteps. And would we skip that or play it?
I think you should show it. It's cool.
Okay. So it's pretty much based on like a fan video that we found on YouTube, who was someone who explained these are the heroes of Overwatch. You can learn who's coming around the corner because every hero has a unique footstep sounds. We have the big leather boots from Reaper. Very fast-paced tracer footsteps. That's Bastion, our human killing machine. Peg leg Junkrat. Roadhog. Lots of Foley sounds as well on the movement. And me.
你好。
So the next example is about Soldier 76, and I play it real quick. I will talk over it. It's really about the ultimate, and we have some normal weapon fire as a reference. And then he turns on his ultimate.
I've got you in my sights.
We want to clearly communicate when the ultimate is on, when it ends. Like there was this really nice pitch, which is all driven by RTPCs and this DataFlow system. And the good thing about that was we do a lot of hero iteration and ability iteration. The design team, 1 week, that ultimate might be up for 6 seconds. Maybe then the next week it's like only 4 seconds. Like they change these numbers all the time. And because most of our dynamic sounds in Wwise are authored in a way that they're driven by RTPC, we don't have to do anything. It will just automatically remap and end, and the sound identity of the sound is identical, even though they might tweak the values now and then. And then you should talk about the Dragon Strike.
So I want to show you some stuff. We mentioned earlier that we use Wwise as a sound design tool. I'll come back to this in a second. This will show how almost ridiculous we would get with layering sound. So I go into Justin's work unit here and try and find, this might take a second, optimizations, Hanzo. Okay, there's a bunch of sounds. And you'll notice that these are a lot of blend containers. We used blend containers all the time to, here's the ultimate, to layer things together. So this is like the portal sound for the Spirit Dragon. It's got 2 sounds, not too bad. The summon blend has...
You can also just play it once you
Yeah,
see
that's
it.
true. So the portal sound. And these things make, we may have just brought in a lot of source at this point and are layering things together, trying things out, building it and hearing it in game without having to do a lot of the layering in something like Pro Tools. So there's all these different sub layers that are part of this, that are different sounds in there. The flyby's got, multiple layers. The presence loop has got which one? The bow, yeah. The bow draw has got, that stuff there. So there's all these sounds that just, this is, look at this guy. It's got, 6, 7 layers just for what's, a relatively basic sound. So we take all this stuff and design it in here, and then eventually we have to render it down. And that's something I think actually Wwise could help with potentially someday. If an event has sounds that, Wwise can figure out do not need to be separate layers, there is a theoretical world where it could mix down these different layers at in build time, which would be really, really nice. But we did it very manually. So when we take all these different sounds, we eventually do that consolidation pass. Now, if I go down to the ultimate ability, let's take 1P, Hanzo. All those different sounds, and there was more than I played, became this, these really straightforward stereo assets, as you might expect. But having it in Wwise was a huge advantage for us because especially while we're in that design iteration phase where they're like, oh, we want it to end sooner, or we want it to have a very clear tell at the end. We have all the sub parts of essentially a session in here, and we can remix it on the fly with a designer, play it in the game, immediately hear it. So it was really, really great for us. And there's just a small video of it playing back in game. So all those assets come. Another way we could use Wwise was with our character Lucio to really stretch a single sound asset to do a lot more than it might seem at first. So I'm going to go find these sounds. So if I find the footsteps for Lucio, I think 1P DJ, especially this pivot sound. So when he turns his skates, one of the, it's got this sort of, these 2 layers that are playing.
We want to say it's a hero on skates.
Yeah, it's a hero on skates, yeah.
Saying.
So there's like this sci-fi layer, but then there's this clack. And there's only one asset here. So we wanted to try and, make this asset sound different, every time. I'm going to turn it up more so you can hear it more. So there's all the typical things that people do. You randomize the volume, which is done here. You randomize the pitch. But then he leveraged a lot of the, where is it, RTPC, of the envelope feature of Wwise. So there's a modulator envelope on this that's randomizing the attack of the sound, the decay, pulling it out so that this one sound can be played, you know, sometimes it's very subtle, sometimes it's much bigger and more over the top. So that's one example. Another example I want to give you in here before I switch is another character called Junkrat, and how we used a ton of RTPCs for the movement of the tire. So I believe this is it. Yeah. So you'll see that this is an example of what he was saying, using DataFlow to drive these parameters. There's all kinds of stuff on here. Movement velocity, airtime is causing this to go away. The wall run time is modulating it in different ways. All these different things, duration over time, it just changes its pitch slightly. Each layer has a different set of RTPCs. Now, I'm not sure how this will sound, but
I think you need to drive one before you hear anything.
yeah, that's what I'm trying to find, but I don't know what that is. I think it's the airtime, probably. Yeah. So let's see some of these layers here. I might not be able to get this going. So there's the chain loop that's always present. There's a climb loop. I won't be able to show you this because I didn't actually author this sound, but you'll be able to see it in this video in a second that all these different RTPCs kind of help this thing feel really dynamic and in the world. So first some examples of him skating, and then we'll show you the example of the rip tire.
Check this out. Audio medic.
And even when you change different player songs, healing or speed has different set of sounds as well.
Let's up the tempo.
Okay, so this is a little cool thing I didn't show you in there, but we actually, because he's a music-based character, we are driving a Wwise meter based on that music you're hearing when he switches between the two songs. And then those numbers that we get out of the Wwise meter are passed back to the game, actually, and then drive the visuals, which is really fun. So all of the inner workings of the gun, the speakers moving, these little meters right here, will change according to the music and work appropriately. And even when you mute the music, it actually stops moving. So you'll see.
Let's get you healed up.
And as you mute it, there's nothing. So
I still think that's a bug, but design liked it.
and then here's the rip tire moving around. So you just see all the character that's added to the sound.
Fire in the hole!
You hear it running out of gas towards the end. It starts sputtering more.
Fire in the hole!
You hear the engine load kind of changing.
Fire in the hole!
All right, so that should give you a good example of sort of how we put a lot of, or attempted to put a lot of information into the sounds. There's a lot more than that, but feel free to ask about some of those as we wrap up today.